What is cybercrime? What does it look like? We have two amazing guests today that live on the front lines of cybercrime, and we'll hear their horrifying stories of actual Michigan crimes. Stay with us. I'm Lisa Ellen Smith, and this is Focus on Business.
Well, things have really been active over the past few weeks, and especially as we are keeping a really close look and track of what's happening around the country, we also see here in Michigan some concerning trends, although not as concerning as what we see happening in places like across the South in Texas and California, Florida, even Georgia, Arizona, South Carolina, where we do see disease spread reaching levels that actually exceed what we experienced here in Michigan during the April and early May type time period. So these are concerning trends. Michigan has really defied those, and frankly, much of the Midwest and the Northeast has also been in pretty good shape relative to the rest of the country. But in the last few weeks, we are seeing some of our numbers start to tick up. In fact, several weeks in a row. So this is something that we're paying really, really close attention to. And we're also asking for businesses who are open to get that COVID-19 preparedness and response plan, dust it off, and recommit yourself to it, because our ability to stay open is highly and closely tied to our success in preventing the spread of this disease. So we have to remain vigilant. We have to resist the urge to let our guard down, because we have had some success here in recent months. But as we see this trend increase, we know that we have to up our vigilance in our efforts to prevent it from spreading more. We saw in this past week the governor do a press conference, and in that press conference, she did indicate that while she wasn't planning on moving the state back in terms of phases of reopening, there was some real concern about compliance with some of the safety guidelines and rules. The chief among them being the use of face coverings or face masks when in public. You require everybody to use them in closed public areas, and so that's one of the main or key areas of focus. And while there weren't any announcements in this past week on what stepped up enforcement efforts might be, we can expect that there will be in the coming weeks some additional regulations, or at least enforcement of existing regulations coming out. So stay tuned on that. But again, just want to impress upon you to as business owners and patrons of businesses to please keep your vigilance up. We've made a lot of progress, and we just can't afford to give any of it back.
We've got some great guests on today's show. Detective First Lieutenant Jim Ellis of the Michigan Cyber Command Center, and Jeff Detloff, President and owner of Providence Consulting. Today we're talking about actual crimes, cyber crimes. We want to hear what this really sounds like. We hear about lots of different ways that this can happen, but we're talking to owners today, and owners want to know, and these are Michigan crimes we're going to talk about. So you want to talk a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we can go into some of these actual real life stories.
Sure. I'm with the Michigan State Police. I oversee the cyber section, which is our computer crimes unit, and the Michigan Cyber Command Center, which basically was established to help small, medium business, critical infrastructure when it comes to network intrusions, breaches, and cybercrime.
And Jeff, you're here also today. Do you two work together sometimes?
We do. We're on the front lines. We're trying to defend, and then we're often the first point of contact when something bad happens or we see it, and then it's our job to do the forensic research to gather information when we report it, so that they can do their job.
Well, I think what's important for today's show is that we hear about actual Michigan businesses that have had a cyber attack and really understand the morbid effects that can have on the business. It's not just the owner, this is really, it vibrates throughout a tremendous amount of people when that happens. So what is the first story we want to, and let's not focus on business names, that's not important, maybe just business type?
Yeah, so there was, let's just pick a small organization that is in baked goods, and they are producing bread and delivering it to the local retail establishments. They had an incident last summer, and I'm not sure exactly, but it may have just been one computer, but during that time, they could not produce their product. They could not print labels. They could not deliver their product because their computer had a ransomware attack. So what did that feel like to them? Bad, right? Okay, so their customers, and we're one of their customers, we go down to buy bread. Nope, there's no bread today. What's going on? The shelves are bare. Did they go out of business? I don't know what the heck is happening until we see it in the newspaper. Employees can't do their jobs because they don't have the tools. Owner is scrambling, trying to figure out, how do I overcome this thing? What steps do I need to take? Do I need to report it to the police? All this type of stuff. Huge disruption in that one little small, and we picked that first because it doesn't matter what size. The bad guys are not just picking on large organizations. It's all the way up and down. If you're in business and you have a computer and you're connected to the internet, it's a dangerous place, and you need to do the right things and stay protected.
And then that bakery's customers didn't get a delivery today, so they might not be able to serve a sandwich, or
exactly,
and on and on. Yeah,
yeah.
That's...
And so then so they couldn't serve a sandwich. So then, then a retail customer comes in. And maybe they have a bad day. Maybe they go kick somebody's cat. I don't know. But like you said, there's a ripple effect. There's all the way across, just because of one computer stopped working.
So I envision in a small business, it's more like, the family gets around the table and says, oh, what are we going to do, right? So, and they don't all report. Why would you not report this?
A lot of times, I think there's hesitation to report because of reputation reasons. They don't want to have a poor reputation among the public, or they feel embarrassed because they've been a victim of cybercrime. So yeah, it's one of those things. Not everybody reports. Sometimes I think they feel like, what's the point of reporting? It's happened. Let's try to recover, do what we have to do, and get back in business.
Yeah, and you could relate that maybe to a sexual assault victim. How many times do they not report because of the embarrassment and the questions that are going to be asked? And I just want to get on with my life. And this is what we see with businesses that suffer any type of cyber incident. And it doesn't need to be ransomware. It could be a simple business email compromise where someone's email account was overtaken by someone with malicious intent, a stolen or guessed password. They got into their email. They did some things. Is that a reportable crime? Yes, it is. But people are not reporting that.
Oh, okay.
Let's just get on with it. Let's change the person's password. Okay, we're done.
So in the case of a more serious attack, like a ransomware, where there's more imminent threat, I mean, what does that look like? I mean, is it a SWAT team with guys, dropping from lines into windows, with, cars pulling up to what does it look like?
No,
I don't know. I'm sure it doesn't look like that. But.
Not at all. One of the things we emphasize with everybody is, usually when you call the Michigan State Police for a crime, non-cyber related, your local dispatch center, somebody will show up in a patrol car in uniform. We do not do that because we respect people's privacy. We don't show up in uniform. We don't even want people to know we're at your business, as you're probably thinking too. So we take it very seriously. Everything is confidential. So we try to be under the wire if you call and when you call. One of the reasons we want you to call, even though you may not think it's that big of a deal, or maybe there's not prosecution, is we want to find out what those indicators of compromise are. How did it get in? What happened when it was in? Because we can take that information, anonymize it, and push it back out to the industry, to small and medium business. Say, hey, keep an eye out for this, protect yourself against this. This is what we're seeing, and that's a large part of what we do. So, you know, very often our first thought isn't prosecuting somebody, it's how did they get in, what variant of ransomware or malware is this, and we go review logs, we start looking at things to figure out how it got in and what it was doing.
Is there some kind of notice, cyber amber alert that this is going on that people can sign up for?
We have dissemination lists, and the contact information is available through this show also. But one of our email addresses is the MC3. If you or a business wanted to send their email address to us, we can put you on this dissemination list. We push out products and newsletters of what we're seeing, best protections to take based on what we're seeing, and other information that comes out.
Note to self. Except if I have a pretty good plan in place, like let's say, Jeff, I'm your customer, could be a reality. Are you checking that list anyway? Do I have to do that if I have you on my
yeah, so
case?
we're enrolled in all types of things because we're doing threat intelligence. We need to know what is coming at us, and when it changes, we can react to it. We also push out directly to our customers, you know, be on the alert for this or those types of things. But yes, everyone needs to be aware. Mm-hmm. You may not understand the technical details around it. You just need to know there's something new, or there's, you know, and then give that information to someone who can act on it within your organization. Or if it's an outsourced IT provider, then they should know. Yeah,
oftentimes we tell everyone to call us before you need us. Establish that relationship. So then if you come in one day or you have questions about maybe what you're seeing on your system or on your network, call us. We'll run through it with you, just kind of give you a peace of mind, let you know what it is, good, bad, indifferent. But yeah, it's important to build those relationships before you actually need to call somebody.
So let's talk about another example, a medical facility here in the state that, again, was last summer. They had an incident, ransomware attack. The typical scenario is you come in the morning and your computers aren't working, all the files are encrypted, there's a nice letter on the screen saying, hey, we've got your files. If you'd like to get them back, pay us in Bitcoin. Whatever the amount is, it's going to be in Bitcoin, which what the heck is Bitcoin? We need 3 of those and we'll get your files back. Oh, and by the way, we've taken the opportunity to delete your backup, so don't bother messing with that, just get us our money. You know, it's that type of a scenario. And so this happened to this medical practice, and there's lots of repercussions from that, okay? Because they're medical, they fall under HIPAA rules, they've got reporting requirements, they've got legal issues, they've got public relations issues and reputation issues, and their decision was, we're not going to pay the ransom and we are going to close our doors. So how does that feel to the 30 or so employees that are in that facility? They're out of a job immediately. The patients that are coming for their appointments today, the doors are closed with the sign, I'm sorry, we're closed. What? How can this happen? Mm-hmm. You know, and then think about the repercussions of that. The fact that I need that medical help, I can't get it here. Where's my patient records? They're electronic. They're not there anymore. So the human factor, the feelings, the emotions, the gut-wrenching stuff that's happening inside that business owner is not good. We need people to understand that and to do the right things to avoid it.
What are some of the things you've seen, Jim, in terms of actual real-life stories here?
I can give you a case. A lot of business transactions or projects, you can look up documents online. But the one I'm thinking of right now is a construction company that had several customers, and they couldn't understand why they weren't getting payment from customers. And what had happened is bad guy found some project documents online that are publicly available, looked at who the customers were. They then created an email account that looked very similar to the construction company's email address. It was one letter off, but if you were to look at it quickly, you wouldn't notice it. And they would then send invoices to these customers for projects owed that you could see in the documents, and customers would then pay them. So once the construction company started contacting their customers, customers were then telling them, hey, here's what we're doing, we made payment. And they realized, no, you didn't pay us, you paid somebody else. So not only is this construction company not getting paid, but their customers are paying a bad guy and virtually losing their money. In this case, we had one customer that actually paid out $300,000, and they ended up losing $160,000 of it, and we were able to stop the rest of it through the bank because they reported immediately, because time is of the essence when we're talking financial transactions. And it all depends from bank to bank and when that can be stopped and when it can't. Sometimes it's, you know, a few hours to a few days, but you know, usually it's well after the fact, several days before you realize this is even going on. So as soon as you find out, I can't stress enough to call us.
What a story. And the customers were then still liable for that payment to the construction company, right?
They were, absolutely.
I've never heard that one. See, this is important. This is really to hear the actual nuts and bolts of this. I've never heard that kind of a story before.
Right. In a related thing to that, what we'll see is someone loses control of their credentials. Bad guy gets onto their email account, puts some forwarding rules inside their account that says any email that has the word wire transfer or bank or these types of words, don't send that to where it's supposed to go. Instead, send it to me. So now he's the man in the middle, and now he's got this direct correspondence with somebody who's saying, hey, do this wire transfer. Oh, redirect it over here. And we see this where people are unknowingly sending money, as in this case, to the wrong bank account, and you don't get it back. Bad guy got rich, you didn't, you lost. And it's insidious that it can happen, but it very, very easily happens. And we see it a lot.
What are some other things that you see?
We've had, I can tell you, insider threats is commonly some of the incidents we see where employees were either dismissed or they're disgruntled to where they're at, stealing data. This particular incident I'm thinking of, they took some data that included personal information, PII, social security numbers, names, dates of birth, that kind of thing, and were selling it for a profit, obviously. We actually went to court and tried to prosecute this one, and this was a big learning lesson for the business because they had no acceptable use policy within their business. Therefore, prosecution was not authorized against this particular person. Ultimately, they lost their job, obviously, but this goes back to, you know, have some policy in place, how your users are, you know, what's considered acceptable on your network, on your devices. And it can be something as simple as what's expected of them, what's not expected while they're in the place of business, just to help protect them if something like this does happen.
Right, we see this also, and you think about how a small business started, where it's an entrepreneur, great idea, got a customer, got a second customer, maybe a third. Now I need some employees, and I don't know, so it hires an employee or two or three. Now they're 18 people, and never took those steps to put in the policies to control the behavior of those people, and now they're in trouble.
Like,
okay?
What kind of language are we talking about, specifically?
Yeah, it's simple stuff like, this is what we expect of you when you're behind your computer, and it could be a one-page thing or a three-page thing that simply says, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Mm-hmm. This is what you're authorized to do.
Don't shop online. Like, what are those things?
Could be that. Mm-hmm. Could be whatever you want it to be. I mean, there's
business functions. Yeah.
Yeah, there's templates, and there's a lot. People could search the internet for acceptable use policies and find things and adopt it to their
acceptable use policy.
Yeah,
I'm
adopt it.
Certain that is not in my employee handbook.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Maybe you have an HR company that's helping you with your employee handbook, and they've got the normal stuff that's in there that's been there for 20 years. Well, this is new. This is stuff that needs to be in there in the last 5 years because of these cyber crimes. An insider threat is a huge attack type of thing that business owners, it's real. They need to be aware of it. Whether somebody leaves with information or is disgruntled and leaves with information, they could be in trouble.
Any other quick stories we can hear?
We had a mortgage refinancer. This was a couple years ago in Michigan that was a victim of ransomware. And similar to the other case we discussed, they did have backups. Unfortunately, they never tested their backups. They had their IT company there attempting to restore their information that was unsuccessful. And it was just, you know, similar to the doctor's office. It was just going to be too much time and money to try to stand that business back up. So they've lost their customer data, the financial information for their transactions, any future transactions, and they had no way to recover it. And it was just too exhausting for them to try to recoup and restore anything from scratch. So they closed their doors.
Amazing. There were people who probably couldn't close on a house deal then, right? In the middle of that. I'm sorry, I want to go on and on with this, but we are out of time.
Whenever I hear another story about a cybercrime victim, I wonder, am I doing everything that I can do to protect myself, my family, my loved ones, my business? You may feel the same way. What we need to understand is that to protect ourselves, we need to understand the risk. And risk is in two pieces. The first part is threat. What are the cyber threats? We call it the threat landscape. We can't control the threats. They're everywhere. The other side of that is the vulnerability. Am I vulnerable? So there's a threat and there's a vulnerability. And if I'm not vulnerable in a certain area, I have low risk. On the other hand, if I am vulnerable and there's a threat, I have high risk. So I need to understand what the threats are first. So here's some statistics around what's happening in the world today with regard to these cyber threats. This is based on a report of several 100,000 cyber attacks during 2019. 70% of those attacks were from external actors, threat actors, which means 30% came from insiders, insider threats. Now you think about the risk here, and 30% of the time it's from people on your payroll, perhaps, or someone that was close that had too much access. Only 70% is from external. Of those 70%, 55% of these were what are called organized crime units involved. So these are sophisticated attackers. Most of the time it's from a cybercrime organization. 45% of those were hacking attacks. So these again are sophisticated people with motivation and skills and money, resources. 86% of all the attacks under this study were financially motivated. That tells us what they're after, right? They need to get into our bank accounts or steal information that's going to lead to some kind of financial gain. It's not about the kid sitting in his basement with too much time on his hands. These are organized crime after money to get out of our bank accounts. 22% of these attacks involved phishing. We read about phishing all the time, and this seems like a low number to me. I've read other statistics that say 90% plus of attacks had phishing involved. So, and the phishing is a social engineering attack that tries to steal credentials, which is that first step. So understanding these threats is an important piece of it. Understanding the vulnerabilities is the next step. Now, your vulnerabilities are different than mine or anyone else's. So the threat landscape, or understanding the threat landscape, is the first step, and then you need to go down and say, am I vulnerable in these areas? Well, you have money in your bank account, so you're certainly a target. You're vulnerable in that area. Are you protecting that bank account with not just a password, but with a password and two-factor authentication? If you say no to two-factor authentication, you have a higher risk. So it's that type of analysis. And you may not be able to do all this stuff yourself because this is pretty sophisticated. So you may want to engage a third-party outside IT consultant that has experience in understanding cyber threats and understanding the risk analysis to help you arrive at the right decisions that you need to make around what is the threat and what are the risks. We do know that cybercrime is relentless, it's not stopping, and we need to do the right thing. So hopefully this helps with your analysis, and do the right things and you'll stay safe.
Focus on Tech, brought to you by Providence, making technology easier.
This is Denise Policella with Focus on Legal. Now that you're running your business almost entirely online and from potentially dozens of remote locations, you really need to review your cybercrime risk and make sure that you're as risk averse as possible. Unfortunately, legally speaking, you're not going to be able to recoup your losses through legal action. So prevention is key here. Let's take a look at what your policies and procedures are. Make sure you have a risk management in place. First thing you're going to want to do is make sure that you have a robust and detailed IT and cybercrime policy. This is going to be something that's included in your employee handbooks, your operations manuals, and in your contracts, both with your employees, your key employees, and your independent contractors. These are going to be clauses that include things like restrictions on downloading unauthorized software or apps, not using public Wi-Fi, regularly scanning for cyber threats and malware, and this kind of thing. In fact, some employers have moved to simply purchasing dedicated laptops for all of their staff and requiring them to use just those laptops for working and no personal use whatsoever. The next thing you have to do is robust enforcement. If you're not enforcing and monitoring your staff's online presence and computer and IT activity, you've just wasted words on paper. So have regular, random external and internal audits of their IT behavior. Unfortunately, a lot of crime and also innocent data breaches, ransomware, that kind of thing, comes from inside the company. So unless you're enforcing and monitoring your employees' online behavior and computer practices, you're not going to be doing yourself any good. Third thing you must do, review everything with your insurance carrier. They might not only have additional good suggestions for you, they may have requirements for you to be covered for IT breaches and cyber crimes. So you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself, because no matter what, you're still going to be at risk to some extent. So we want to make sure that you're protected against cybercrime, cyber theft, financial crimes, embezzlement, and any kind of ransomware. You know, remote working and the remote business are most likely here to stay regardless of what happens in the future. So let's just make sure that you're protecting yourself against these risks.
Focus on Law, brought to you by Policella and Associates, PLLC.
The executive producers of Focus on Business are looking for your stories. Stories from owners of established businesses that have come through amazing adversity, bucked the odds, found the next big thing. If you have a story, we want to hear from you. Go to our website and maybe we'll invite you onto the show.